Hello language learners, in this video we're going to tackle a famous question. How do I know I'm becoming fluent in Spanish, and what can I do as I approach that stage to continue improving? Entonces, vamos directamente al lío. Hello language lovers and welcome to my channel. My name is Jerry and this YouTube channel is for anyone interested in learning Spanish or interested in language learning in general. I've had an incredible amount of fun learning Spanish this past year and I'm going to continue diving into it further this year. Each week in this channel, I'll share the tips, the experiences, and the practical stuff that's making the language learning experience fun and effective for me with the hopes that it will arm you with the tools to do the same for yourselves. Now in today's video, we're going to scratch the surface on a problem that students who have been studying a language for a while will come across. The moment when you begin to surpass the vast majority of organized learning resources, find that you're learning less and less from your go-to apps and materials that taught you the basic language concepts, and have a difficult time finding resources to teach you about the subtle differences that you didn't care about before when you first started learning, but now want to master as you're approaching becoming an advanced speaker of the language. We'll go over the signs that let you know that you're becoming more fluent in the language, cover what you can focus your learning on when you get to this point, and then get to a really fun part at the end where I'll go over some clutch resources that will help you progress through this stage for Spanish. Con eso, empecemos el show. How do you know you're becoming fluent in your language? So what does it look like when you cross this threshold as an intermediate progressing to advanced language learner? Here are a couple signs you can look out for. Number 1, consult the official European language levels. The first is to consult one of the most popular language learning frameworks developed in Europe, titled the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. This aims to rigorously determine your language level across reading, listening, speaking, writing, and interpersonal communication. Levels range from A1 for absolute beginners to C2 for complete mastery, resembling native level fluency. B1 to B2 is considered intermediate and roughly covers the sweet spot of when you'll discover a lot of the things we'll be talking about in this episode. For Spanish specifically, there's a test called the DELE, Diploma de Español Lengua Extranjera. This is an exam given by the Instituto Cervantes in Spain that will test your language skills and give you an official language level. Number 2. The range of language situations which you feel comfortable going into. This second method is less rigorous, but more fun, and it really seems to get at the root of why most people learn languages in the first place, to comfortably interact with people in different situations. For this, the idea is to ask yourself this question. From a language perspective, what situations would I feel comfortable going into, knowing that it'll be a fully Spanish environment? At first, like for me, that answer might be 0. You might say, if it's an all-Spanish situation, whether I'm speaking or just listening and not engaging, I'm terrified either way. As you progress to the intermediate level, that might change to, okay, I'm comfortable going in to listen to a show or a lecture or speech, as long as I don't have to talk myself. Then that might change to, okay, I'm happy to listen to the conversation and even join in myself, but only when it's with friends and we restrict ourselves to talking about weekend plans, our interests, food, but nothing else. As you progress through the intermediate to more advanced levels, you'll find that this list of comfortable situations continues to grow. You might become empowered to feel comfortable taking a cooking class, joining a dance group, running through legal processes like applying for a visa or work permit, giving an impromptu speech in front of a class, and more. This is one of the coolest ways to watch yourself grow because it feels like situations and environments that were once not available to you suddenly are opening their doors to you, and the world literally feels like it expands in the possibilities it offers you. Number 3. It's becoming difficult to find learning materials online that go into the level of depth I'm looking for. This might be more Spanish specific because there's a ton of introductory Spanish content scattered through the web. But when you start hitting the intermediate to advanced levels, you'll find that a lot of these resources don't seem to really help. At the start, any blog post about verb conjugations seemed to have a good chunk of things to teach you that were new. Then at some point, you start going through posts and rounds of Duolingo, and you find yourself saying, I feel like I know most of this, or it's not going to the level of depth or nuance that I'm looking for. At this stage, you might find yourself saying something like, okay, I know 2 different ways to say exactly this one thing, but I know there must be some difference between the 2, in tone or mood, and nothing seems to be showing me what that subtle difference is. For example, tengo que hacerlo, hay que hacerlo, and he de hacerlo all mean the same thing, I have to do it. But there must be some subtle difference, right? Why are there different ways of saying the exact same thing? In truth, there are slight differences. Tengo que hacerlo would most resemble I have to do it, the way an English speaker would say it. Hay que hacerlo would most resemble it has to be done, someone has to do it. And he de hacerlo would most resemble I ought to do it or I must do it. So while these all mean the same thing, you might use one or another in a different situation depending on context or level of formality. And as you progress through the intermediate stage, you'll find yourself wanting to understand these subtle differences to command the language with a great degree of precision. What should I prioritize learning as I start to become fluent? Okay. Congratulations for getting this far in your journey, or for committing to getting this far in the future. Now, what can you do at this stage? What can you put your focus more on to learn and continue improving? Here are a few things I've been thinking about more as I've moved into the intermediate stage of language learning. Number 1, regionalisms, sayings, and jargon. The first thing to recognize is that there are different flavors of Spanish across different countries, and even in the same country across different regions. Mexican Spanish has its own unique flair from Venezuelan Spanish or Chilean Spanish. In Spanish from Andalusia, Spain, has a unique flair to Spanish in Las Islas Canarias, also in Spain. One thing you can start to do is to familiarize yourself with the words and language tendencies that are used in different Spanish-speaking countries. This might involve more apparent differences, like the usage of vosotros in Spain versus ustedes in Latin America, or it might touch on words that are used in one context in one country and in a slightly different context in another country. For example, voy a hacerme una foto being more common in Spain to voy a tomarme una foto in parts of Latin America, or me has hecho daño being more common in Spain to me has lastimado being more common in Latin America, and ahora mismo for Spain or ahorita for Latin America. These are situations where you'll be understood if you use one form or another, but you might personally get confused to keep seeing one form from one resource and another form in a different set of resources until you formally learn these differences yourself and you internalize the different styles of Spanish that exist in different countries. Also useful for the intermediate level are the sets of expressions, jargons, and sayings that you often can't translate directly, but are often used in everyday situations and are really beneficial for you to pick up. And getting these phrases feels really cool because it almost feels like learning some secret code within the language that you didn't understand before but now understand. Some sayings have English counterparts and others don't. For example, if someone says tienes la sartén por el mango, it translates to you have the pan by the handle, but it really means you're in control of the situation. If someone says tienes un as en la manga, this one translates to you have an ace up your sleeves, which does translate directly. And then there are words like cacerolada, a collective protest in which noise is made with pans, referring to a unique Spanish protest style where people lean out their balconies and hit pots and pans together to make noise as a form of protest. So you can see why words like that might seem really tough to translate. Number 2, learn to speak in different registers of formality. The words, phrases, and expressions you use can subtly or completely change depending on the person you're talking to, whether talking to a friend, in an interview, or giving an impromptu speech in front of a class. And getting to the intermediate to more advanced levels of Spanish is a good chance to practice speaking and living in these different registers. In real life, you'll often have to weave through different situations that require you to speak in different registers of formality. So this is something that will directly increase and expand the situations I feel comfortable in box that we talked about earlier in the video. For example, in a more formal situation, you might say, estas cosas son ubicuas. These things are ubiquitous. But in another situation, you might say, estas cosas se encuentran por todos lados. These things are found everywhere. Subtle, but things that you might want to gain control of as you approach more advanced levels of the language. A cool challenge here is to come up with a topic and give 3 different versions of it to 3 pretend audiences. Your friend in a more informal context, an interview that's going to be broadcasted nationwide throughout the news network, so more formal context, and then a child or a baby, and how you might use different words, diminutives, or otherwise to modify your speaking style. And now for resources. I think there's 2 core groups of resources you'll need. Resources that expose you to natural native Spanish so that you can discover more advanced forms and phrases, and resources that break down these advanced forms so you can more aptly understand them and be able to use them yourself. My go-to for discovery is watching cool shows. I have another video covering Spanish Netflix series recommendations, but here I'll focus on some great YouTube recommendations. The first is Lethal Crisis. He's a guy that goes all around the world traveling. In some videos, he dives deep to show how people really live, exposes issues that need to be brought to light, and spends time trying to put himself in their shoes. Other videos of his are more fun and about doing some crazy adventure, like this one where he visits Chernobyl. What is certain though is that you will get barraged with Spanish at lightning speed, and I'm sure you're gonna walk away from each video with a lot of new things to learn. The second is Video Patas. This is a Spanish group that does really hilarious short comedy skits, like this one titled If Alexa Were a Real Person, or this one about the online learning experience for students. You'll play through their sketches one by one and have to stop yourself from watching them all. And the third is Enchufe TV. This is a Latin American group that also does super hilarious comedy sketches, like this one about a millennial dad. This is a slightly different comedy style, but they're still super fun, hilarious, and I'm sure you'll like them. Now, when it comes to understanding the more advanced forms and phrases and breaking them down, here are a couple recommendations. The first is a set of YouTube channels, Spanish with Vigente, Español con Juan, and Maria Español. They all have great videos covering and explaining Spanish concepts that are more advanced in great detail. And my recommendation would be to subscribe to them all, and as you come across a concept or a form that you want to understand better, search through these channels to see if you find a video covering the topic. Like the difference between hacerse, volverse, ponerse, and convertirse, which all mean to become and can be very confusing for Spanish learners. And lastly, the biggest gem I've discovered for intermediate to advanced Spanish students, Español Avanzado. This site has it all. They take videos from news, comedies, interviews, and everything else under the sun and break down the vocabulary and language structures that are used throughout the video through little notes that pop up on the screen as you watch the videos. And you can also test your knowledge after with fun quizzes that they have that give you points and refresh your knowledge. They also take written content and articles and highlight the vocabulary that's less common and give you very natural English translations that they make themselves as opposed to more robotic automatic translations. They also have a directory of some of the most common language questions that you'll have for Spanish, like doubts on when to really use por versus para, or how to masterfully employ the subjunctive, or what words are more common in Spain versus Latin America, and the distinct phrases and idioms and slang, and a part of it that's more like a Spanish urban dictionary. If I had to pick a single resource to rely on this year, moving forward as an intermediate student, it would without a doubt be this one. And now you have the knowledge, so for all you intermediate students who are progressing towards more advanced levels in your language journey, as you come across all those little doubts that you suddenly want to now master, take a look through some of these resources and see if they have explanations that will teach them to you. And have a lot of fun taking your Spanish to the next level to progress towards that native level fluency. I hope this tip has been super helpful to you. I know it was very helpful to me. And if you have requests for any topics in the future, feel free to always drop a comment or just share about your language learning journey, as those are a blast to read. Subscribe for more language tips, experiences, and resources, and we'll see you next week. Sending good vibes and energy to you all, and hasta la próxima.